Hartville is not marked on most tourist maps of Ohio. This city, with a population of just over 120,000, is nestled between hills and farmland, preserving the typical Midwestern atmosphere. Quiet streets with neat houses, several shopping centers, and dozens of churches of various denominations. But for almost a decade, the center of the city's spiritual life has been Grace Church, a modern glass and concrete building constructed with donations from parishioners. Every Sunday, the parking lot in front of the church is filled to capacity, and the 600-seat hall rarely has any empty seats. The ringing of bells echoes throughout the neighborhood, announcing the start of Sunday morning service. Pastor Andrew Morgan stands behind the pulpit, his silhouette clearly visible against the backdrop of a huge stained glass window. At 42, he looks younger, fit, with neatly trimmed dark hair and a piercing gaze that seems to look right into your soul. His voice, deep and melodious, fills the church. "Faith is not what we demonstrate on Sundays," he says, pausing and looking around at the congregation. "Faith is how we live every day. It is the choices we make in moments of temptation and weakness, the choice between light and darkness." The congregation hangs on his every word. Among them are school children, workers, lawyers, housewives. Hartville is a town where religion still plays an important role in the lives of many, and Pastor Morgan knows how to speak to them in their language, how to touch their hearts. In the front row sits his wife, Olivia, in an elegant blue dress, with a perfect smile on her face. She nods in time with her husband's words, like the ideal companion of a man of the cloth. At the same time, 3 blocks from the church, Jake Montgomery is wiping down the counter at Starbucks. Sunday morning is a relatively quiet time. Most customers are either at church or enjoying a late breakfast at home. A new track he wrote last night plays in his headphones. At 26, Jake still clings to his dream of a music career, although he has begun to wonder if it's time to move on. "Hanging out? There seems to be a stain there." The manager's voice pulls him out of his reverie. Jake nods and rubs the same spot on the counter more vigorously. This isn't the life he dreamed of after college. 3 years of working as a barista, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to find the time and money to record a demo. The last time his band played at a local bar, only 16 people showed up. Hartville isn't the place to build a music career, but something keeps him here. Maybe it's the fear of failure in the big city, or maybe it's the comfort of routine, even if that routine stifles his creativity. The doorbell interrupts his thoughts. After the service, visitors begin to arrive. Jake puts on a professional smile and prepares for the influx of customers. At the same time, after the service, a line forms in front of Pastor Morgan at the church. He always finds a moment for each parishioner. Today, among them, is a teenage girl with long brown hair. She stands slightly apart, shifting uncertainly from foot to foot. "Leah, how nice that you came today." The pastor greets her warmly when her turn comes. "Thank you, Pastor Morgan," she replies, lowering her eyes. "My mom couldn't come today." The pastor nods understandingly. Leah's mother, Carol Summers, is known in the community for her struggle with alcohol addiction. After Leah's father left 3 years ago, the situation only got worse. At 17, Leah already knows what it's like to be the adult in the family. "It's good that you came on your own," the pastor says, gently touching her shoulder. "If you need help, of any kind, you know I'm always here." There is genuine concern in his eyes, something that is so rare in Leah's life. She smiles gratefully and nods. Olivia Morgan watches the scene from behind a table covered with literature, where she is handing out brochures about upcoming church events. Her smile remains unchanged, but a shadow flits across her eyes. She knows her husband better than anyone. His kindness, his charisma, and his weaknesses, which he so carefully hides from his congregation. Later, in their spacious home in the prestigious Hartville neighborhood, the tension between the Morgans becomes palpable. They move around the kitchen preparing Sunday dinner like a well-rehearsed dance, where partners avoid touching each other. You were particularly inspired today, Olivia says, cutting vegetables for the salad. Thank you, dear, Andrew replies, without looking up from the chicken breast he is marinating. I felt a special connection with the congregation. Yes, I noticed, she says, pausing before adding, especially with young Miss Summers. Andrew glances quickly at his wife. She's going through a difficult time. We all know about the situation with Carol. Of course, Olivia agrees. Just be careful. People might misunderstand your concern. You know how quickly rumors spread in Hartville. I'm a pastor, Olivia. Caring for my flock is my job, he replies with a hint of irritation. Olivia says nothing, just nods and continues cutting vegetables. Over the years of their marriage, she has learned to pick her battles. And over the last couple of years, there have been too many to fight everyone. In the afternoon, as the sun begins to set on the horizon, Jake welcomes another visitor to Starbucks. Pastor Morgan walks in alone, without his usual entourage of parishioners. He often stops by after Sunday service. Good afternoon, Pastor, Jake greets him. The usual? Decaf latte? Double vanilla syrup? You've studied me well, Jake, the pastor smiles, taking out his wallet. While Jake prepares the drink, the door opens again. Leah Summers enters, her backpack slung casually over her shoulder. When she notices the pastor, a mixture of surprise and joy appears on her face. Pastor Morgan, I didn't know you'd be here, she says, coming closer. Leah, what a pleasant coincidence, he replies, his smile widening. Let me treat you. What would you like? Jake watches the scene, pretending to be focused on making coffee. But something about the way the pastor looks at the girl makes him feel vaguely uneasy. It's not the look of a spiritual mentor toward his ward. There's something else there. A caramel frappuccino, please, Leah orders, and the pastor nods to Jake, indicating that he will pay for both drinks. Jake takes the order and begins preparing the second drink, still watching them out of the corner of his eye. They are standing a little closer to each other than social norms dictate. And there is admiration in the way Leah looks at the pastor that goes beyond the usual respect for a clergyman. When Jake hands them their drinks, Pastor Morgan offers, "Would you like to join me at my table, Leah? I'd like to hear how you're doing in school." "I'd love to," she replies, and they move to a corner table where no one can overhear their conversation. Jake can't help but notice how Leah's face has changed, from the uncertain girl she was when she entered the cafe to someone who glows with attention. And there is something disturbing about this transformation. Wednesday evening after youth service. Pastor Andrew Morgan stays in his office longer than usual. Through the frosted glass door, his silhouette is visible, calm and upright, sitting at his desk. Opposite him is the fragile figure of Leah Summers. "Your situation at home worries me, Leah," says the pastor, his voice soft and filled with concern. "I think regular meetings would help you. Spiritual mentoring." Leah nervously fiddles with the sleeve of her sweater. Her gaze is a mixture of hope and distrust. Too often, adults had let her down. "Does that mean I'll be coming to you? To church?" "Not necessarily to church," Andrew replies, leaning forward slightly. "We can meet wherever is convenient for you. At a cafe, for example. The main thing is regularity and openness. Without that, spiritual growth is impossible." Leah nods. The idea of having someone who will really listen to her seems almost unreal, especially if that someone is Pastor Morgan, a man who always finds the right words to comfort and guide. "I'd like to try," she says quietly. The pastor smiles and reaches across the table, lightly touching her hand. "Then let's start next week. I think we should meet twice a week. You have a cell phone, right? I could send you texts from scripture to reflect on." Across town, Jake Montgomery sits in front of his computer screen, staring at his bank account balance. The red numbers seem like a mockery. Last week's studio rent ate up almost all of his savings, and the track he recorded has only gotten 47 plays on SoundCloud in a month. Jake runs his hand through his hair and turns off the computer. A guitar hangs on the wall, a gift from his father on his 18th birthday. Follow your dream, his father said at the time. But what if the dream leads nowhere? Jake's phone rings. The screen lights up with Mom. "Hi, Mom," he answers, trying to sound more cheerful than he feels. "Hi, dear. Just wanted to see how you're doing. How's your music?" "Things are moving along," Jake lies. "I recorded a new track last week." "Oh, that's wonderful. Your father would be so proud." Jake swallows. His father died 2 years ago without ever hearing anything worthwhile that Jake had created. "Yeah, I think he would have been." "What about your day job? Still at that coffee shop?" "Yes, Mom. It's temporary, you know that." Of course. It's just that you're 26 now, Jake. Maybe it's time to think about something more." "I have to go, Mom. My shift is starting soon." After the call, Jake stares at the guitar for a few more minutes before grabbing his backpack and heading to work. At the Morgan house, Olivia is sorting through her husband's clothes, preparing them for dry cleaning. A phone falls out of Andrew's jacket pocket. The screen lights up from the impact with the floor, showing a notification of a new message. Olivia picks up the phone and freezes, staring at the screen. The message is from Elle. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. It means so much to me." Olivia stands motionless, the phone in her hand feeling heavy as a rock. Her husband has always been attentive to his parishioners, especially those in need of support. But something about this message seems too personal. She opens the message thread, scrolling up. Dozens of texts sent at odd hours, late at night, early in the morning. Bible verses, yes, but mixed in with something more personal. "You are special, Leah. Your smile lit up my day. It's so easy to talk to you." Olivia puts her phone back in her jacket pocket, her hands trembling slightly. It could just be a pastor caring for his flock. But she knows her husband. She knows how he sometimes looks at young women when he thinks she isn't watching. Jake is working the evening shift at Starbucks when the front door opens, letting in Pastor Morgan and Leah Summers. They are laughing about something, their heads tilted toward each other. Jake notices the pastor's hand briefly touch Leah's back before they approach the counter. "Good evening, Jake," the pastor greets him with a smile. "How are you today?" "I'm fine, Pastor Morgan," Jake replies, trying not to show his surprise at their joint appearance. "What can I get you?" "A decaf latte for me and..." The pastor turns to Leah. "A caramel frappuccino, please," she says, and Jake notices her gaze lingering on the pastor a little longer than it should. As Jake prepares their drinks, he watches out of the corner of his eye as they settle down at a table in the corner. Leah opens her notebook and shows something to the pastor. He leans closer, their heads almost touching. From the outside, it might look like just a teacher and a student, but something about their gestures, the way they look at each other, makes Jake feel uncomfortable. This goes on for weeks. Every Tuesday and Thursday at the same time, the pastor and Leah come to Starbucks. Always the same table, always the same drinks. Always those lingering glances and accidental touches. One evening, when there are almost no other customers, Jake approaches their table to wipe down the one next to them. "You shouldn't worry about what other people think," the pastor says to Leah, his voice quiet but intense. "Sometimes God creates bonds that others can't understand." Leah nods, her eyes glistening with tears. "But my mom would never understand. And what would Mrs. Morgan say?" The pastor notices Jake and stops abruptly. "Thanks, Jake. Everything's fine here." Jake nods and walks away, but a strange chill runs down his spine. What he heard didn't sound like spiritual guidance, and there was something almost threatening in the pastor's expression when he noticed Jake. On Saturday morning, when Jake opens Starbucks, the first customer is Olivia Morgan. This is unusual. She usually comes after church on Sundays with her husband. "Good morning, Mrs. Morgan," Jake greets her. "What can I get you?" "Just black coffee, please," she replies, her voice sounding tired. "And can I ask you a question, Jake?" "Of course," he replies, starting to prepare her order. "Does my husband come here often?" Jake freezes for a second. "Yes, quite often, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays." "Alone?" Olivia asks. her gaze fixed on Jake's face. Jake feels caught between professional courtesy and a strange sense that something is wrong here. "Usually with Leah Summers," he finally replies. "They kind of do spiritual mentoring, I think." Olivia takes her coffee, her face betraying no emotion. "Of course. Mentoring. Thank you, Jake." As she leaves, Jake feels a heaviness in his chest. Something is going on in these people's lives, something he is unconsciously becoming a part of, and he's not sure he wants to know what it is. On Tuesday, the pastor and Leah come to Starbucks again. But this time, something has changed. Leah looks agitated, almost frightened. The pastor speaks to her in a quiet, soothing voice, his hand resting on her shoulder a little longer than it should. Jake feels a growing unease. It's no longer just discomfort from observing the strange dynamic between them. Now it's something deeper, more disturbing. He remembers Olivia Morgan's face when she asked about her husband. He remembers snippets of conversations he overheard by accident. And he realizes that he may be witnessing something that goes far beyond ordinary spiritual guidance. When Leah goes to the bathroom, Pastor Morgan approaches the bar for another drink. Jake makes up his mind. "Pastor Morgan, is everything okay?" Leah seems upset. The pastor's eyes turn cold. "That's none of your business, Jake. Just do your job." The sharpness of the reply catches Jake off guard. Pastor Morgan has always been the epitome of politeness and warmth. This is a new side to a man Jake thought of as nothing more than a kind religious leader. When Leah returns, they quickly leave without finishing their drinks. Through the window, Jake sees them get into the pastor's car. He has a strange feeling that their next meeting will not be at Starbucks. It has been a month since Pastor Morgan began his mentoring meetings with Leah. Now they meet not only at Starbucks, but in other places as well. The prayer room at the church after closing time, the college library, where no one knows Leah. Sometimes the pastor's car, parked in a quiet corner of the city park. One evening, Leah sits in the passenger seat of the pastor's black sedan. They have just finished discussing a passage from the Bible. At least, that's how their meeting began. "You understand me like no one else does," says the pastor, his hand on the steering wheel, but his gaze fixed on the girl. "Sometimes I feel that you are closer to me than people I have known for years." Leah blushes, her gaze lowered to the Bible open on her lap. "I'm just so grateful for your time, Pastor Morgan." "Andrew," he corrects her gently. "When we're alone, you can call me Andrew." An awkward pause hangs between them. Then his hand slowly moves from the steering wheel, covering her palm. A touch that can no longer be explained as accidental or spiritual support. "What's happening between us?" he begins, his voice lower. "It's special, rare. Not everyone will understand." "I know," Leah replies quietly, not removing her hand. Her heart is racing. Part of her, the part that still goes to Sunday school and believes in moral absolutes, is screaming that this is wrong. But another part, hungry for attention and recognition, is absorbing his every word. "I think about you more than I should," the pastor admits, moving closer. At this moment, Leah should have pulled away. She should have remembered everything she was taught in church, but instead, she looks up and meets his gaze. When his lips touch hers, the line that cannot be crossed is left behind. Jake finishes his shift and exits through the back door of Starbucks. The employee parking lot is dimly lit by a single streetlight. He is tired and thinking only of a hot shower and a couple of hours of work on a new track when he notices a familiar black sedan parked in the far corner of the lot. At first, he wants to just walk by. It's none of his business. But something makes him slow his pace. It's hard to see anything through the car's tinted windows, but as Jake gets a little closer, he sees two silhouettes in the front seats, unnaturally close to each other. Suddenly, the car door opens and Leah jumps out, hastily adjusting her clothes. Pastor Morgan follows her, his shirt half unbuttoned. "Leah, wait!" The pastor's voice sounds alarmed. "We need to talk." Leah notices Jake and freezes, like a deer in the headlights. Her face shows a mixture of shame and fear. "Jake," the pastor says, his tone instantly changing to a more formal one. "It's late. Are you done with your shift?" "Yes," Jake replies, his gaze shifting from the pastor to Leah and back again. "Is everything okay?" "Of course," the pastor replies too quickly. "I was just giving Leah a ride home after our Bible study meeting." Leah looks like she wants to sink into the ground. "I have to go," she mumbles and quickly walks away toward the street. Pastor Morgan gives Jake a warning look, then gets in his car and drives away, leaving Jake alone in the parking lot. Jake stands still, his thoughts in turmoil. What he saw was unambiguous, and it wasn't spiritual guidance. It was something much more disturbing. At home, Jake can't concentrate on his music. His fingers hover over the keys of the synthesizer, but all he can think about is Leah jumping out of the pastor's car, her confused face when she saw Jake. What should he do? Pastor Morgan is a respected member of the community, a spiritual leader, a man to whom parents entrust their children, and Leah is just a confused teenager from a dysfunctional family. Too vulnerable, too trusting. Jake remembers his younger sister. She was 16 when her music teacher at school started paying her special attention. Fortunately, her parents noticed the changes in her behavior early enough. The teacher was fired and had his license revoked. But the psychological scars remained for years. The thought that something like that could happen to Leah makes Jake sick. And at the same time, who is he to interfere? A barista, a failed musician who can barely pay his bills, against a pastor who has the power and respect of the whole town. At the Morgans' house, Olivia sits on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap. Andrew enters the bedroom, loosening his tie. "Late," Olivia remarks, her voice deliberately neutral. "Long day at church?" "Yes," he replies, avoiding her gaze. "Lots of meetings, planning the charity dinner." "Who exactly did you meet with, Andrew?" He freezes for a moment, then continues unbuttoning his shirt. "The organizing committee." "Why do you ask?" "Because I called the church at 6. Sarah said you left at 5. Andrew sighs, turning to his wife. "I had a meeting with Leah Summers. Spiritual mentoring. I already told you about it." "In your car? Until 9 in the evening?" Olivia looks up, her eyes shining with held-back tears. "Where did you get that idea?" Andrew begins, but stops himself. "We talked about her problems at home, about her future. And you need to unbutton your shirt for those kinds of conversations?" Olivia stands up, her hands shaking. "I saw the messages, Andrew. I saw the way you look at her. She's a child. She's 17. You don't understand." Andrew's voice hardens. "You see what you want to see. I'm helping her, guiding her." "How did you guide Rebecca Thompson last year? And Emily Brooks before her?" Olivia wipes a tear from her cheek. "I turned a blind eye. I told myself it was just your devotion to your flock. But with Leah, it's gone too far." "Nothing is happening!" Andrew raises his voice. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. This is your paranoia, Olivia, and I'm tired of making excuses." He grabs a pillow and blanket from the bed. "I'll sleep in the guest room." When the door slams behind him, Olivia sinks onto the bed, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The next day begins with a heavy heart for Jake. He hasn't slept most of the night, thinking about what he saw in the parking lot. No solution comes to him, and he goes to work with a heavy feeling that he must do something, but he doesn't know what. Starbucks is unusually quiet for a Tuesday. Jake is almost certain that the pastor and Leah won't come in today, not after he saw them yesterday. But around 6 in the evening, the door opens and Leah walks in, alone. Her eyes are red, as if she has been crying. As she approaches the counter, Jake notices a fresh bruise on her wrist. "Hi, Leah," Jake greets her quietly. "What can I get you today?" "Just water, please." Her voice sounds lifeless. As Jake pours the water, he makes up his mind. "Leah, about yesterday, if you need to talk. Her eyes widen with fear. No, nothing happened. Just forget it, okay? That bruise. Jake nods at her arm. What happened? Leah instinctively covers her wrist with her other hand. I fell. It's okay. Leah, if someone is hurting you, you don't understand, she suddenly exclaims, attracting the attention of several customers. Lowering her voice, she continues, he loves me. He cares about me more than anyone else. Jake feels a chill run down his spine. Pastor Morgan? Leah, he's over 40. He's married, and you're only 17. Age is just a number, she says with a confidence that sounds as if the words are not hers, but someone else's. Our connection is spiritual. It's special. Jake shakes his head. It's not, and you know it. What he's doing is wrong. It's illegal. Leah picks up a glass of water, her hand shaking. You don't know anything, and if you tell anyone, I'll say you're lying. She leaves without finishing her water, leaving Jake even more confused than before. Closer to closing time, when the coffee shop is almost empty, Pastor Morgan enters. His usual confident smile is absent, replaced by a tense, almost threatening expression. Jake, he says, walking straight up to the counter. We need to talk. I'm listening, Jake replies, feeling his heart begin to beat faster. What you saw yesterday, the pastor begins, his voice quiet but firm. It's not what you think. Leah is going through a difficult time. She's emotionally vulnerable. Sometimes she misinterprets my concern. Really? Jake can't hold back the sarcasm. And I thought it was you who misinterpreted the concept of spiritual mentoring. The pastor's face hardens. Careful, Jake. You're making serious accusations based on a misunderstanding of the situation. I've seen enough, Jake replies. And it seems to me that you're using your position to manipulate a girl who's too young to understand what's going on. The pastor leans across the counter, his voice becoming menacingly quiet. You're just a barista, Jake. A failed musician. Who's going to believe your word against mine? Think about that. He straightens up and adds in a more normal tone. We'll be here tomorrow night. After closing, Leah has some spiritual questions that need to be addressed in private. With that, he leaves, leaving Jake stunned. Hours later, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, Jake makes a decision. Tomorrow night, he'll stay late after work. He'll prepare the coffee shop for closing as usual, but he won't leave. He needs to know what's going on. He needs to have proof if it comes to that. Meanwhile, the tension is mounting. Leah is torn between her admiration for the pastor and her fear of what is happening. Pastor Morgan is balancing his public persona with his secret desires. Olivia is faced with a choice between loyalty to her husband and her conscience. And Jake, suddenly finding himself at the center of a situation that goes far beyond his everyday life. They are all on the brink, and tomorrow evening could change everything. Wednesday, 9:45 p.m. Jake wipes down the last tables at Starbucks. His colleagues have already left. He volunteered to close the coffee shop on his own. It's dark outside, and the rain that started an hour ago is getting heavier, drumming on the glass. Jake glances nervously at his watch. Officially, the coffee shop closes at 10 p.m. The pastor said they would come after closing. Will they be here soon? And what would he say to them when they arrived? Sorry, we're closed. Or pretend he was late with the cleaning? In the back pocket of his jeans was a phone with the voice recorder turned on. Jake wasn't sure what he would do with the recording if he managed to capture something. Go to the police? To the pastor's wife? He doesn't know. All he knows is that he can't just stand by and let this continue. At 9:55 p.m., the door opens, letting in a gust of cold wind and Pastor Morgan. He is alone, without Leah, and this confuses Jake. We're closing, Jake says, trying to sound normal. I know, the pastor replies, taking off his wet raincoat. Leah will be here soon. She asked her mother for the evening off, said she was going to extra classes. Jake nods, continuing to wipe down the tables. I'm almost done. You'll have to wait outside. The pastor looks at him with a slight smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Don't be silly, Jake. We can be friends or enemies. The choice is yours. Jake straightens up, clutching the rag in his hand. I don't want to be either. I just want to do my job. Then do it, and don't get involved in things that don't concern you. The door opens again, and Leah enters, soaked from the rain. Her face is tense, her eyes darting between the pastor and Jake. You're already here, she says, as if surprised by this fact. Of course, the pastor smiles at her with a warm, sincere smile, the one Jake saw in church. I promised I'd help you sort out your questions. Jake notices Leah nervously tugging at the sleeve of her jacket, covering a bruised wrist. She doesn't look like a girl who has come for spiritual counseling, but like someone who has been cornered. I'm closing the coffee shop, Jake repeats. You need to leave. Jake, the pastor's voice hardens. Don't do this. Just leave, and we'll forget this unpleasant moment. You can't use my workplace for anything. Jake takes a step forward, feeling his heart pounding in his chest. He has never been brave, but now something inside him compels him to stand his ground. Pastor, maybe we should leave, Leah suggests quietly. We can talk somewhere else. No, the pastor cuts her off, his tone making Leah flinch. We need to resolve this now. Jake, be reasonable. You don't want to complicate your life. Suddenly, the women's restroom door opens, and Olivia Morgan steps out. Her eyes are red from crying, but her expression is determined. All three freeze, stunned by her appearance. Olivia? The pastor is the first to recover. What are you doing here? Following you, she replies simply. I had to see for myself. There's nothing to see here. The pastor's voice becomes soothing, professional. I'm just helping Leah with her problems. Stop lying, Olivia explodes. I know everything. I saw the messages. I saw the way you look at her. How could you? She's a child. Leah cringes, her face contorted with shame and embarrassment. I didn't. It's not your fault, dear, Olivia tells her, her voice softening. It's him. He does this over and over again. First it was Rebecca, then Emily, now you. Nothing like that ever happened. The pastor raises his voice. You're making this up. Leah, don't listen to her. She's just jealous of our spiritual connection. Spiritual? Olivia laughs bitterly. I saw the hickeys on Emily Brooks' neck. Was that spiritual too? Leah takes a step back as if she's been hit. Emily, you said I was the only one who truly understood you. He says that to everyone. Olivia shakes her head. Then he uses them and discards them when he gets bored. The pastor suddenly grabs Leah's arm and pulls her toward him. We need to leave, now. Let her go. Jake lunges forward, but the pastor pushes him away with unexpected strength. Don't interfere, the pastor growls. Leah breaks free from the pastor's grip and retreats toward the restrooms. I want to go home. Just let me go. You're not going anywhere. The pastor follows her. Not after you've learned too much. Jake and Olivia exchange worried glances, then Jake steps forward. Pastor Morgan, calm down. Let's all just go home. It's too late for that, the pastor replies, continuing to advance on Leah, who retreats into the hallway leading to the restrooms. Jake pulls out his phone. I'm calling the police. Put the phone down. The pastor's voice becomes threatening. Now! Leah seizes the moment to hide in the women's restroom. The pastor rushes after her, and the door slams shut behind them. Olivia and Jake hear screams and the sounds of a struggle. Help her! Olivia pushes Jake toward the door. He bursts into the bathroom and sees a horrific scene. The pastor is holding Leah by the throat with one hand and reaching into his bag with the other. Metal flashes. A gun. Stop! Jake yells, lunging forward. A shot rings out, deafeningly loud in the confined space of the bathroom. Leah screams. The pastor recoils, looking down at his chest, where a dark stain is spreading. He falls to his knees, still clutching the gun. Jake freezes, not understanding what has happened. Leah slides down the wall, clutching her shoulder where blood is visible. The pastor falls to the floor, his eyes wide open but unfocused. "Oh my God," Jake whispers, rushing to Leah. "You're hurt." "Is he dead?" she asks in a weak voice. Jake looks back at the pastor's motionless body. He's no doctor, but even he can see that the shot was fatal. "I think so." Olivia appears in the doorway, her face white as chalk. "What happened?" "Call 911, Jake says, pressing napkins against Leah's wound. "Hurry!" The next few minutes blur into a chaotic kaleidoscope. Police and ambulance sirens, bright lights, people in uniform filling the coffee shop. Jake repeats his version of events over and over. He heard an argument, went into the bathroom, a shot rang out. He's not sure who pulled the trigger. Detective Samantha Clark, a tall woman with a sharp gaze and a determined chin, is leading the investigation. She takes Jake aside while paramedics attend to Leah and forensic technicians photograph the pastor's body. "Tell me everything from the beginning," she says, taking out a notebook. "And don't leave out any details." Jake begins to tell her about the strange encounters between the pastor and Leah, what he saw in the parking lot, and the pastor's threats. He shows the detective his phone with the voice recording, although all that can be heard on it are screams and a gunshot. He activated it too late. "Are you saying the pastor threatened you?" Detective Clark clarifies. "Yes. He said it would be better for me not to get involved," Jake replies, feeling his hands tremble. "And he came here after closing time with an underage girl," the detective notes. "Why?" "He said it was for spiritual guidance, but..." Jake shakes his head. "That wasn't it." "Mrs. Morgan confirms your version," the detective says. "She claims her husband had inappropriate relationships with several girls from the congregation. She came here to catch them in the act." "That's true," Jake nods. "She was here when they arrived." Detective Clark surveys the crime scene. The cash register is open. Cups and napkins are scattered on the floor. "Interesting," she says thoughtfully. "At first glance, it looks like a robbery gone wrong. The cash register is open. The place is a mess. But when you start digging deeper..." She doesn't finish her sentence, but Jake understands. She has doubts about the robbery theory. "Where's Leah now?" he asks. "Will she be okay?" "She was taken to St. Joseph's Hospital," the detective replies. "The bullet grazed an artery. Her condition is critical but stable. As soon as she's able to speak, we'll get her statement." Jake nods, feeling a strange numbness. Everything that has happened seems unreal, like a nightmare from which he cannot wake up. "Can I go?" he asks. "Not yet." Detective Clark shakes her head. "We still have a lot of questions, and I would like you to repeat your story for the record." Jake agrees, even though all he wants to do is leave and forget about this night. But he knows that won't happen. What happened today at Starbucks has changed his life forever. A few miles away, at St. Joseph's Hospital, Leah Summers is in intensive care. Monitors beep, counting her heartbeat, tubes and wires entangling her fragile body. Her mother, Carol, sober for the first time in weeks, sits next to the bed, holding her daughter's hand. "Stay with me, baby," she whispers. "Please stay with me." The doctors said the next 48 hours would be critical. The bullet damaged an artery and grazed her lung. Leah lost a lot of blood before the paramedics stabilized her. Now all they can do is wait. At the Hartville police station, Detective Samantha Clark studies the preliminary report from the crime scene investigators, her eyebrows drawn together in a deep frown. Something about this case doesn't add up. She's not sure what yet, but her instincts are rarely wrong. And right now, it's screaming that the obvious version of events isn't the whole story. 3 days after the incident at Starbucks, Detective Samantha Clark stands in front of a board covered with photos and notes at the Hartville Police Department. Her eyes scan every detail of the crime scene, trying to piece together the whole picture. "Something doesn't add up," she says to her partner, Detective Michael Rodriguez. "If it was a robbery, why didn't the perpetrator take the money from the cash register? It was open, but all the bills are still there." Maybe the gunshot scared him off and he ran away, Rodriguez suggests. Then where are the signs of a break-in? Clark points to the photos of the coffee shop doors. No damage, no signs of forced entry. Jake Montgomery said he closed the coffee shop but let the pastor and the girl in after closing time. Rodriguez shrugs. Maybe the robber hid inside before closing time? And no one noticed him? Clark shakes his head. Too many coincidences. Too many inconsistencies. At that moment, a technician from the video analysis department enters the room. Detective Clark, we've recovered some of the surveillance camera footage. You should take a look. In the technical lab, Clark and Rodriguez watch the recovered video. The quality is not perfect. Part of the recording is damaged, presumably due to a system malfunction. But it clearly shows Jake letting Pastor Morgan and Leah in after closing time. Then Olivia Morgan appears, coming out of the women's restroom. A confrontation between all four is visible. Then the pastor and Leah hide in the hallway leading to the restrooms, which is out of the camera's field of view. Here's what's interesting, says the technician, switching to another recording. This is from the employee parking lot camera, 20 minutes before closing. The screen shows Jake exiting through the back door, looking around, then returning to the coffee shop. He is holding something in his hand, but the image quality does not allow us to see what it is. Can we enhance this? Clark asks. We're working on it, the technician replies, but based on preliminary assessment, it looks like a gun. Clark and Rodriguez exchange glances. So the weapon may not have belonged to the pastor, but to Jake, Rodriguez says. We need to talk to Leah, Clark decides, if she's conscious. At St. Joseph's Hospital, Leah Summers lies in a hospital bed, pale but conscious. Her mother dozes in a chair nearby. When Clark and Rodriguez enter, Leah opens her eyes. Leah, Clark begins gently. I'm Detective Samantha Clark. I'm investigating what happened at Starbucks. Are you feeling well enough to answer a few questions? Leah nods weakly. Her mother wakes up and looks warily at the detectives. What do you remember about that night? Clark asks. The pastor and I. Leah stumbles, glancing at her mother. We were supposed to meet after closing, for a spiritual conversation. Is that true? Clark presses gently. Leah closes her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. No, she whispers. It wasn't a spiritual conversation. He said he loved me, that I was special. How long did this go on? Rodriguez asks. A few months, Leah replies. At first, it really was just mentoring. Then it changed. What happened in the bathroom, Leah? Clark asks directly. Leah recounts how, after confronting Olivia, she ran to the bathroom and the pastor followed her. He was furious. He said I ruined his life, that everyone would find out if I didn't leave with him. He pulled out a gun. His gun? Clark clarifies. Leah frowns. I'm not sure. It all happened so fast. Jake came in. They fought. There was a gunshot, and I felt pain in my shoulder. Did you see who pulled the trigger? No. Leah shakes her head. I fell and blacked out for a few seconds. When I came to, the pastor was lying on the floor, and Jake was next to me. After the hospital, Clark and Rodriguez visit the Morgans' home. Olivia, still in shock from what happened, welcomes them into the living room, where every detail screams perfect Christian family. Mrs. Morgan, Clark begins, we need to know about the problems in your relationship with your husband. Olivia clenches her hands. Andrew was a complicated man. In public, he was the perfect pastor, but in private, he had his weaknesses. What weaknesses? Young girls, Olivia replies, her voice trembling. It started 3 years ago. Rebecca Thompson, she was 18, then Emily Brooks, 16. I turned a blind eye, believed his promises to change, but with Leah, it went too far. Did you tell Jake Montgomery about this? Rodriguez asks. No, Olivia shakes her head. But I saw him looking at them in the coffee shop. He knew something was wrong. Why were you in the coffee shop bathroom before they arrived? Clark asks. I was watching Andrew. I wanted to catch them together, take pictures as evidence. Our marriage was over, but I wanted to protect other girls. At the police lab, ballistics confirmed that the gun found at the crime scene belonged to Pastor Morgan, a legally registered Glock 19. But the analysis of gunpowder particles yields an unexpected result. The traces of gunpowder on the pastor's hands are minimal, says the forensic expert. But on Jake Montgomery's shirt sleeve, the concentration is much higher, typical of someone who fired the shot. When technicians enhance the quality of the parking lot video, it becomes clear that Jake did indeed carry something resembling a gun, then returned to the coffee shop. He could have taken the pastor's gun after the shooting and carried it away, then returned it to the crime scene to stage self-defense, Rodriguez speculates. Or planted as evidence against the pastor, Clark adds. We need to talk to Jake Montgomery again. Jake sits in the interrogation room, his face tired but calm. When Clark shows him the surveillance photos, he doesn't look surprised. Would you like to explain what you were doing in the parking lot 20 minutes before closing? Clark asks. Taking out the trash, Jake replies. With a gun in your hand? Rodriguez points to the enhanced image. Jake is silent for a few seconds, then sighs. It was my gun. Legal. I have a permit. Why did you bring a gun to work? I was afraid, Jake admits. The pastor threatened me, and I saw what he was doing to Leah. I wanted to protect her. So it was your gun, not the pastor's? Clark clarifies. Jake lowers his eyes. Yes. I brought it and hid it in the staff room. When they came, I took it with me. And what happened in the bathroom? Clark insists. The pastor had Leah by the throat. He was furious. I went in and we started fighting. The gun went off. Accidentally? Jake looks up. No, he replies quietly. I pulled the trigger. There is silence. Then Jake continues. I had a sister, younger. She was 16 when her music teacher took advantage of her. She never recovered. She killed herself 2 years ago. His voice breaks. When I saw the pastor doing the same thing to Leah, I couldn't let history repeat itself. I had to stop him. Clark and Rodriguez listen as Jake tells the whole story. How he had planned only to scare the pastor, but when he saw him attacking Leah, he lost control. After the shooting, he panicked, took the gun out through the back door, wiped it clean, and returned it, placing it in the pastor's hand. He staged a robbery by opening the cash register and making a mess. I didn't want to kill him, Jake says, but I don't regret stopping him. A week later, Jake Montgomery is charged with second-degree murder. The case causes an uproar in Hartville. The town is divided. Some see Jake as a hero who protected a vulnerable girl, others as a lynch mob who took it upon himself to be judge and executioner. Leah Summers is recovering physically, but the emotional scars will remain with her for a long time. Her testimony about her inappropriate relationship with the pastor, backed up by the testimony of Olivia and other former wards, reveals years of abuse of power and trust. And in his holding cell, Jake Montgomery writes a letter to Leah. I'm sorry you were hurt that night. I'm sorry I didn't intervene sooner, but I don't regret my choice. Sometimes the system doesn't work. Sometimes you have to choose between the law and justice. Detective Clark, concluding her report on the case, reflects on the fine line between justice and vigilante justice, on the price of secrets and silence, on how deception and manipulation can destroy lives. In her work, there are rarely simple answers or clearly good or bad people. More often than not, there are only people making decisions in difficult circumstances, and the consequences of those decisions spreading out like ripples on water, affecting the lives of many.